Let's begin our conversation on Chapter 12, Leadership. The objectives: learn what types of people become good leaders, understand the importance of leaders adapting their behavior to each situation, know what skills are essential for effective leadership, understand the theories of leadership, and learn how leaders use power and influence. We begin by looking at how our leaders, managers, administrators, and supervisors differ. So let's hit some of these items here. Leadership usually involves motivating and inspiring others to the benefit of the organization as well as the members being led. Leaders do not always have oversight responsibilities for the performance of others, and leadership usually does involve having the ability to craft a vision and conduct planning. Management, on the other hand, is primarily about the execution of already set and established rules and protocols and things of that nature, as well as creating value for the organization. Administration and administrators are about making sure the flow of information, processes, and reports are done smoothly. And then supervisors. Usually when we think about frontline managers, the frontline leaders, we think about the supervisors, the ones who are closest to the employees. Supervising usually has a coaching element where the supervisor and the employee interact. Leadership characteristics, leader emergence. People high in openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, masculinity, creativity, and authoritarianism, and low in neuroticism are more likely to emerge as leaders than their counterparts. And when we talk about leadership emergence, emergence is a part of trait theory that postulates that certain types of people will become leaders and certain types will not. So it's basically the likelihood that a person will become a leader. We see high self-monitors, people who adopt or adapt their behavior to the social situation emerge as leaders more often than those who are low self-monitors. Also, more intelligent people are more likely to emerge as leaders than are less intelligent people. And we look at patterns of abilities and personality traits is more useful than looking at a single ability or trait. And of course, we have the one that we always talk about, conscientiousness, the one who is focused on details and getting things done correctly. That, of course, has a great deal of impact, most often when it comes to people's work behavior, as well as leadership would be. Motivation. Leadership characteristics, looking at motivation. The motivation to lead. Effective identity motivation, the motivation to lead as a result of a desire to be in charge. Non-calculative motivation. Those who seek leadership positions because they will result in personal gain. And social normative motivation. The desire to lead out of a sense of duty and responsibility. So, when we look at leadership characteristics, we can look at leadership performance as well. We'll be looking at the traits, needs, task versus person orientations, and then what makes an unsuccessful leader as well. So, looking at traits. First of all, when it comes to leader performance, this is different than leader emergence. Leader performance is a part of trait theory that postulates that certain types of people will be better leaders than will other types of people. Regarding, for example, intelligence, which we discussed earlier, intelligence, one theory proposes that the key to effective leadership is the synthesis of three variables: wisdom, intelligence, being academic or practical intelligence, and creativity. Extroversion, openness, agreeableness, and conscientiousness were positively related to leader performance, and that neuroticism was negatively related to leader performance. We also found that management, decision-making, and oral communication skills were highly correlated with leadership effectiveness. In contrast to leader emergence, leader performance here, which deals with the likelihood that a person becomes a leader, and leader performance involves the idea that leaders who perform well possess certain characteristics that poorly performing leaders do not. So we can look at the comparison here between leader emergence and leader performance. Research on the relationship between personal characteristics and leader performance has concentrated on three areas: traits, needs, and orientations. Traits, needs, and orientations. Let's first look at needs. We have the need for power. According to trait theory, the extent to which a person desires to be in control of other people. Need for achievement, the extent to which a person desires to be successful. And need for affiliation, a desire to be around other people. What we've determined is that there is a leadership motive pattern, a certain pattern that we see with leaders. And this leadership motive pattern is the following: a high need for power, control other people, but a low need for affiliation, a low desire to be around other people. It just makes me remind myself of one of the things I heard before about leaders. He is amongst us, but he's not one of us. The idea is that a leader does have a certain degree of separation from the people that they lead. So you can see a high need for power, but there will always be a lower need for affiliation because you don't really have that close-knit groupness that you normally have if you are one of the subordinates. Then we have task versus person orientations. Person-oriented leaders act in a warm, supportive manner and show concern for employees. They believe employees are intrinsically motivated. We have task-oriented leaders set goals and give orders, believe employees are lazy and extrinsically motivated. Some of you may remember some of the theory X and theory Y. Here, obviously, with theory X, with the task-oriented, and theory Y, with the person-oriented, you can see some of the influences there. So here's a managerial grid leadership styles, the managerial grid. And they're looking at the degree of concern for production versus degree of concern for people. So let's look at some of them. First, note the grid to the right there. We have these grids sort of graphed off in lines. We have the orientations of 1-1, 9-1, 9-9, 1-9, and 5-5 in the middle. So let's look at these. We have the impoverished manager, referred to 1-1. It is the lower left quadrant. So we have low concern for production as well as low concern for people. So the impoverished manager is uninvolved in the work and withdrawn from the people. Then we have the sweatshop manager in grid reference 9-1. Results driven and sees people as tools to that end. Then we have the country club manager, reference grid 1-9, is focused on being agreeable and smoothing relations. Then we have the status quo manager, grid 5-5, or the middle of the road manager, is moderately concerned with both work requirements and people's needs. And then we have the fully functioning manager, grid reference 9-9 in the upper right quadrant, is intensely interested in the task and cares deeply about the people. Another view of that graph. So here we see the task orientation at the bottom, okay, and the degree of person orientation to the left. Okay, we see the middle of the road in the middle. The most successful that we see here is the team orientation, with the 9-9 orientation being most interested in the task as well as the people. And as I was saying earlier about the theory and theory X and theory Y, we can see where they're laid out here in the orientation. The theory X is highly task-oriented, but not much with people, and theory Y, very high with the people, very little with the task. Yet another view of the managerial grid that sort of describes how leaders may be more effective, depending on the concern for their people and concern for their production or task. Now, there are going to be consequences for following several of these types of orientations. So let's look at them real quickly here. If you have a low task orientation and a low person orientation, so you are at the very bottom of both of these, you're going to see the following results or consequences of those particular orientations. Low performance, they're performing very poorly. High turnover, a lot of people are quitting or getting fired. And many grievances, a lot of people complaining. Now let's look at low task orientation but a high person orientation. So low task but high person. We see low performance, low turnover, but few grievances. But the key thing there, in this country club manager type of world, you have low performance. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. But people are staying around because, it's somewhat easy. And there are going to be few grievances too because of the ease of working there. So now we'll go to the next one. High task orientation, low person orientation. Here we have high performance, high turnover, and many grievances. This is the sweatshop manager here. So they get high performance out of the people, but they have a lot of people getting fired or getting laid off or quitting, excuse me, and that has its own cost. Remember, in previous lectures, we see there is a great deal of cost to someone having an empty position in their organization. So we don't like turnover. It's a very costly thing. So we have high performance, but high turnover and a lot of complaints. So then we have high task orientation plus high person orientation. Here we tend to have high performance, low turnover, so we don't have a lot of fire, we don't have a lot of people leaving or quitting us, and few grievances. So obviously this approach, the 9-9, is the best according to the managerial grid. So what makes an unsuccessful leader? Well, on the basis of years of research, Hogan and et al. Concluded that poor leader behavior has three major causes. The first is a lack of leadership training given to supervisors. The armed forces are among the few organizations that require supervisors to complete the leadership training before taking charge of groups of people. The norm for most organizations, however, is either to promote a current employee or hire a new employee and place him directly into the leadership role. If training is ever provided, it is usually after the promotion and well after the supervisor has begun supervising. Poor leaders are unable to learn from experience and are unable to think strategically. They consistently make same mistakes and do not plan ahead. And then there may also be some personality problems that make leaders unsuccessful, such as paranoid passive aggressive, where you have this unconscious resentment and anger, or the high likability floater, where you're insecure and seldom rocks the boat or cause trouble, or the narcissist, who is overcome by their insecurity by overconfidence. Other unsuccessful leader behaviors. Rather than concentrating on traits, Roche et al. Collected critical incidents of ineffective leader behavior and found that such behavior fell under 10 basic dimensions. Engaging in illegal and unethical behavior, avoiding conflict and people problems, demonstrating poor emotional control, over-controlling or micromanaging, demonstrating poor task performance, poor planning, organization, and communication, starting or passive rumors or sharing confidential information, procrastinating and not meeting time commitments, failing to accommodate the personal needs of subordinates, and failing to nurture and manage talent. We can also look at the interaction between the leader and the situation. As already indicated, a leader's effectiveness often depends not only on the traits she possesses, but also on the particular situation in which the leader finds herself. In the past few decades, several theories have emerged that have sought to explain the situational nature of leadership. Situational favorability, Fiedler's contingency model. Fiedler's contingency model is a theory of leadership that states that leadership effectiveness is dependent on the interaction between the leader and the situation. Leadership training should concentrate on helping people understand their style of leadership and learn how to manipulate a situation so that the two match. So let's talk about the least preferred coworker scale. Well, this is a test used in conjunction with Fiedler's contingency model to reveal your leadership style and effectiveness. To complete the LPC scale, leaders identify the subordinate or employee with whom they would least want to work. Leaders then rate that person on several semantic differential scales that range from nice to nasty and from friendly to unfriendly. The higher the leaders rate their least preferred coworker, the higher the LPC, or least preferred coworker score. This score is then compared with the favorableness of the situation to determine leader effectiveness. Low-scoring LPC leaders tend to be task-oriented, whereas high-scoring LPC leaders tend to be more concerned with interpersonal relations. So we have, as the situation favorability, we have the task structure, task structuredness. Okay, and the variable in the Fiedler's contingency model that refers to the extent to which tasks have clear goals and problems can be solved. Then we have position power. Refers to the extent to which a leader, by the nature of his or her position, has the power to reward and punish subordinates. And then we have good leader-member relations. Refers to the extent to which subordinates like a leader. Now, it should be noted that high LPC leaders best with moderate favorability and low LPC leaders are best with low or high favorability. Now, the Leader Match is a training program that teaches leaders how to change situations to match their leadership styles. Match is probably the only training program in the country concentrating on changing the situation rather than the leader. So here is how it sort of lays out. The relationship between LPC scores and group success. So situation favorability. If it is low, we tend to see better performance coming out of the low LPC. If it is high, situation favorability is high, we also tend to see high performance coming out of the low LPC. However, if it is a moderate situation favorability, we tend to see the best performance coming out of the high LPC score. Now, organization climate is another factor. We can look at impact theory. Impact theory is a theory of leadership that states that there are 6 styles of leadership: informational, magnetic, position, affiliation, coercion, and tactical, and that each style will be effective only 1 in 6 organizational climates. Alright, let's begin. The informational style, a leadership in which a leader leads through knowledge and information and is most effective in a climate of ignorance. In a climate of ignorance, a climate of which is important for many individuals, the information is not available to them. They are ignorant of history, ignorant of process, ignorant of many things. Then we have magnetic, a style of leadership in which the leader has influence because his or her charismatic personality is present. It's most effective in a climate of despair. A climate of despair is characterized by very, very low morale. Position style of leadership, a leadership style in which the leaders influence others by virtue of their appointed or elected authority, and is most effective in a climate of instability, which people are not sure what to do. Then we have affiliation style, a leadership style in which an individual leads by caring about others, and that is most effective in a climate of anxiety, where the climate of anxiety in which you worry a lot. Worry is the key characteristic of the organization and predominates. Then we have coercive style, a leadership style in which the individual leads by controlling reward and punishment. It's most effective in a climate of crisis. And a crisis would be an organization which the outcome of a decision has extreme consequences. Do we go that way, or do we not merge there, or merge with that group, or let those guys buy us out? It's a crisis because the decision that you make could have some very, very fundamental impact on the organization. And then we have tactical, a leadership style in which a person leads through organization and strategy. It's most effective in a climate of disorganization, a climate in which the organization has the necessary knowledge and resources, but does not know how to effectively and efficiently use the knowledge or resources. Then we have the following: impact leadership strategies. Find a climate consistent with your leadership style. Change your leadership style to better fit the existing climate. Change your followers' perception of the climate, or change the actual climate itself. We'd also view subordinate abilities as well as a factor. We look at path goal theory, a theory of leadership stating that leaders will be effective if their behavior helps subordinates achieve relevant goals. We have the instrumental style in path goal theory, a leadership style in which the leader plans and organizes the activities of the employee. Supportive style, leadership style in which leaders show concern for their employees. Participative style, a leadership style in which the leader allows employees to participate in decisions. And the achievement-oriented style, a leadership style in which the leader sets challenging goals and rewards achievement. We also have the situational leadership theory, a theory of leadership stating that effective leaders must adapt their style of leadership to fit both the situation and followers. A leader typically uses one of four behavioral styles: delegating, directing, supporting, or coaching. Hershey and Blanchard termed the most important follower characteristic follower readiness, or the ability and willingness to perform a particular task. The degree of follower readiness can be measured by either a manager's rating form or the self-rating form developed by Hershey and Blanchard. Scores from these forms place followers into one of four categories, or readiness levels. R1, unable and unwilling or insecure. R2, unable but willing or confident. R3, able but unwilling or insecure. R4, able and willing or confident. R4 followers are most productive and happy when a delegating leadership style is used. These followers are both willing and able to perform the task. Relationships with subordinates, leader-member exchange theory. It concentrates on the interactions between the leaders and subordinates. Leadership member exchange used to be called the vertical dyad linkage model. LMX states that leaders develop different roles and relationships with people under them and thus act differently with different subordinates. Research has determined that we fall into one of two groups: the in group, characterized by high quality relationship with the leader, or the out group, characterized by a low quality relationship with the leader. So obviously, this is one of those duh type of things in a way. You have those who are part of the in-group clique with the leader and those who are not. The members who are part of the in-group employees tend to be more satisfied, have higher performance, and are definitely less likely to leave. The next model by Vroom and Yet is a very interesting one. We'll see more on this a little bit later. But the leadership through decision making is what they focus on. Leadership through decision making. So this model focuses on how leaders can choose to make the best decision and what factors they should take into account. We'll see more on this a little bit later, but let's go over real quickly a decision tree that can be used in the Vroom Yet model. So you start off with a problem at the very top here. State the problem, and then you ask yourself in the first decision point, does quality of decision matter? And let's say it does. So then you move over to the next one. Does leader have enough information? Let's say the leader doesn't in this situation. So is the task structured? And you say yes, and go down following that decision tree. Is acceptance important? You say yes. And then it goes over to the left there because it takes you that direction. Are employees likely to accept the decision? Yes. If you say yes to it, it takes you down and says leadership asks individuals for input and make the decision. But if at the decision point it says are employees likely to accept the decision, you say no, then it asks the following. Do employees share same goals? No. Then you go down. Will group members agree? No. Leadership asks individuals for input and then make a decision. Or if they said yes to that last decision point, will group members agree? Yes. Leadership asks entire group for input and then make decision. So all this is really doing is taking the leadership through the steps it could go through to make sure the decisions, especially if they need to be adopted and bought in by the rank and file, so to speak, you need to make sure that you're touching the proper basis, so to speak, in order to make those decisions. Then there's leadership through contact or management by walking around. I'm sure many of you have heard of this already before. So this MBWA is another popular specific behavioral theory. This one holds that leaders and managers are most effective when they are out of their offices walking around and meeting with and talking to employees and customers about their needs and progress. Many industry leaders, such as Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, have used this approach to great success. So MBWA is thought to increase communication, build relationships with employees, and encourage employee participation. Leadership through power. Well, power is how you can get people to do the things that you want them to, in a way, how you can get them to obey, in a sense. And so here we're looking at leadership through power. We have expert power, power that individuals have because they have knowledge. They're the ones who know things. Legitimate power, the power that individuals have because they are elected or appointed to a particular position. Reward power, leadership power that exists to the extent that the leader has the ability and authority to provide rewards. Coercive power, leadership power that comes from the leader's capacity to punish. And referent power, leadership power that exists when the followers can identify with the leader and the leader's goals. And then we have leadership through vision or transformational leadership. Transactional leadership, style in which the leader focuses on a task-oriented behaviors. We've seen this several times during this particular session. Now we examine transformational leadership, visionary leadership in which the leader changes the nature and goals of an organization. It is believed that there are three highly related dimensions to transformational leadership. We have charisma, idealized influence, inspirational, and motivation. We have intellectual stimulation, refers to the leaders who encourage change and open thinking, challenge the status quo, and appreciate diversity. And individual consideration refers to leaders who encourage individual growth and take the time to mentor and coach their followers. And finally, we have Authentic leadership. By Bill George, 2003. Leaders become self-aware by reflecting on their own ethics, core beliefs, and values. They lead out of a desire to serve others. So obviously, with authentic leadership, we're talking about individuals who probably are in leadership for a good reason, not to fulfill their ego dreams or to build their own fiefdom or empire, but because they feel it's a good thing to do, that they feel like they can add to and be a good component and player in whatever organization or political entity that they want to lead. So leaders become self-aware by reflecting on their own ethics, their core beliefs and values. And so they're not being led by fads. They're not being led by polls. They already have a certain type of ethic foundation, core beliefs and values that they serve and obviously serve others. It's almost referred to as a time, you may have heard of this before, the servant leader. The leader is there to serve those that report to him or her. And that is a slightly different type of thing that we normally see when we talk about leadership. So that's what I wanted to cover with you guys today about leadership in chapter 12.